Hey there, this is a short video that walks through how to create a web map using Leaflet that you can host on GitHub using the QGIS desktop GIS application. This is helpful if you don't want to use a paid or hosted version like Esri or Mapbox. It's a workflow that's worked for me for informal maps you don't necessarily want to be easily locatable, or when you just have some customization you want to do in QGIS that looks pretty and you just want to create a web map version of that. Works pretty well. So as you can see here, this is Athens, Georgia, the place where I'm located, and I've got a few layers on here. I've got a point layer that's some bus stops. I've got another layer that's bike lanes in the city, and then I've got a base map that's an OpenStreetMap base map that I added using Quick Map Services plugin. If you don't have that, it's pretty essential. It's great to have. And so this map's pretty much ready to export. It's not super fancy right now, but it works, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have my QGIS to Web plugin installed. This is a plugin that's been an extension that's been around for a while. You can see it's got about 870,000 downloads, which tells you that it must work pretty well most of the time. So I have that installed already, but you need to if you haven't done that. And then under Web, you'll see QGIS to Web listed here. And you'll see there's several tabs across here. These are just parameters for what you want this web map to look like. You can choose which layers should be included on that map. So if I only wanted some of these layers to be on by default, I could do that. You can do things like how add a layers list. So that's basically a legend. It's a selectable legend. I'm going to keep expanded here. You could add an address search if you want people to be able to look up a particular address. You could search a layer for a particular feature if you want to. Some of these work better than others, I'll warn you. Do you want it to be just the size, do you want it to be the full HTML page or just a small part of that page? Usually I just do full screen listed here. And then how much do you want to show? You can fit it to a layers extent, so I could actually fit it here to the extent of my bus stops and bike layers. I'm actually going to keep it as canvas extent because it might use OpenStreetMap if I'm not careful there. You can also choose the language in which this map is made. Open Layers has also been popular for a long time, and it might be your choice. I like Leaflet. I've found the Mapbox GL export to be somewhat unreliable with this plugin. The nice thing here, though, is you don't have to start from scratch, especially with something like Leaflet. It'll generate a map that then you can customize. So then when you're happy with what you've got here, you can go ahead and go under Export and Export to Folder. You can choose whichever folder you want. I've just got a temp folder where I'm putting it. So I'm going to go ahead and export. And what I get is my browser automatically opened this window, and I get that same map that I was just looking at on QGIS. And if I click on one of it, you can see I get some pop-ups. Those pop-ups are not very helpful, but they're there, right? Here's a bunch of other stuff. For those bike lanes, etc. Here's my legend, so if I wanted to turn off one of those layers, I could, right? And then I've got things like measuring distances, and even if I wanted to look up like where I am right now, let's see how this works. Looks like it does in fact do that, right? So here is basically the geography building here at University of Georgia, where I'm located. So you've got some nice little things that are built into it. What if we wanted to edit this map? Well, if I go back to that temp folder, you'll see QGIS to Web has created a folder here, and it's got several things in here. You've got the index file, which is the one we'll be working with. You've got some CSS, that's kind of stock that comes with Leaflet. That's just styling. Here's our data files that are basically GeoJSON files, some images, no images, some other JavaScript that goes with Leaflet. So basically some things that makes the map run under the hood. Let's open this index file though in a text editor like Notepad++. So what you'll see here is you've got, if you know HTML, if you don't, this probably looks a little scary. But if you know HTML, you've got a head here, a header that loads some of the JavaScript stuff you need to make the map run. You've got some parameters here that makes the map a certain height and width. So like if I change this to like 80, right, and save it, and then load my map here, let's see what happens. Now I end up with, that's not 80%, but it messes with the width of the map, right? So you can start customizing it if there's something else you want to include. with it. Then you've got some other, basically some this loads the bike data. This is some other leaflet stuff that it's loading. You can say what the zoom should be for the map. It's got this attribution thing, which is what shows up down here. This little blue stuff down here is linked right here, right? So that's that same text right here. You've got some measurements. This is that little measurement control that we just saw. And then if you wanted to change the base map, you could. Right here, all you'd have to do is just take basically this XYZ tile portion here. There's a great leaflet providers map that I won't go into here that allows you to change the base map. And then we get into the actual layers themselves. So like this is our bike lanes layer. And you'll see this is the actual pop-up, and it's a table, it's an HTML table. You can look that up if you want a little background on those if you don't know HTML. But basically, you've got one row here, right? And let's say we just wanted to keep the name. There's a name field all the way down here. I'm going to get rid of all the other stuff because that pop-up was super long, right? We don't like that. I'm just going to get rid of all these other rows. So you've got a row start and a row end marker. So TR and then close TR. And then I'm going to save this map. I'm going to reload it here. And now if I zoom in and click on this bike layer, I get just the name of that layer. I don't get all that other stuff that I had before. And in fact, if I wanted to have it look a little bit nicer, I could put a bold tag and put name and then close it off so it's not bolded here and click save. And if I go back to my map and reload it, click on that layer, now I've got that name listed here. So you can start customizing what that pop-up looks like. And you could do the same for the bus stops if you wanted to as well. Right. Last thing I'll say is with this part is if you wanted to change this legend. So the easiest way, if you go back here, to get like say the legend up here to not say Athens Bike Lanes Project, the easiest way to do that would be to change the name over in QGIS. If you forgot to and you're too lazy to create it again, you can scroll down to the bottom where the layers control is and just change the name in the HTML, which is this part right here. So if I just do bike lanes, save it, go back to the map, reload it, there it is, right? And then you can turn them on and off, whatever you want to do. There's also the options of messing around with the styling, like if you want to change the way these points look, you could do that here. Again, I'd recommend starting in QGIS before you export it. But here's like the bus stop. This is CSS for how it looks, right? So the fill opacity, if I wanted to change that down to 0.5, I can save it here. And now you'll see those points are a little transparent, right? You can see underneath that. There we go. So I'm happy with how that map looks. I made some changes if I wanted to. What do you do now? Well, if I go back to my folder, you see all this information here. Github Pages is a great way to then host this information. So if you're not a GitHub user, go ahead and get registered and you can create a new repo. And then you can just simply add your entire working folder here. So I'm just going to upload files manually. If you're an expert QGIS user or a GitHub user, you can do this via a client and do a pull and push, that kind of stuff. I'm just going to drag and drop these files in here because I'm just going to do it the simple way. And you'll see here's those files uploading, boom, boom, boom. Once it's done, I'll go ahead and say that looks good and commit my changes. It's going to process those files, and then what you want to do is go back under settings here, and there's one of the settings is under pages, and this is basically GitHub allowing itself to be used as a source for a web page. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and deploy this from the main, that is the root directory. So we're going to use that, oops, let's try this again, pages. We want the root directory right here. You go and click on save, and it will give you, should give you a link when you're done. It might have just changed this recently. So let's go back to our test leaflet page. Looks like we're about good. Let me try this one more time. Let's go to Pages. Sorry, I had to pause it for a second because apparently you just have to wait. So once you've hit save here, you'll eventually see the link here of your page that you're going to. If I just click on this, boom, there's my map. Yay. So now you've got an online map. You can just share this URL with your friends and family. You can embed it using an iframe and another website. It's a pretty straightforward workflow. So that's the basic walkthrough of how to use QGIS and the QGIS Web plugin to create your very own Leaflet web map.